Amber, what are you doing? I asked, my voice dry like a piece of aged wood. She didn't answer, only stepped closer, wrapping her arms around my waist. The motion was quick, natural, as if it had happened before. Her hand moved up to the buttons of my shirt, 1, 2, then stopped at the third. After that, Amber leaned in as if to kiss me. I never imagined a day would come when the woman who called me dad would seduce me, then stage a fake video to force me into signing over my house. When affection turned into a trap, I realized I was no longer a father, only prey. I am Richard Miller, 68 years old, living alone in a one-story house in Anaheim, California. This house isn't luxurious, nor is it in a gated community with golf courses, but it's the place Linda and I lived for nearly 40 years, where we raised our son, ate simple dinners of grilled meat, and shared every season of our lives. Now Linda is gone, Michael has his own family, and I remain here, between 4 brick walls and an orange grove in the back, like a sentry guarding memories. Zillow values the house at around $450,000, but to me it's priceless, not for its material worth, but because every corner bears traces of the one I loved. Linda once hung our wedding photo above the fireplace. The cream-colored sofa was her favorite spot to read the Sunday paper while I tended the backyard garden. Each time I mop the floor, I still hear her voice reminding me, "Rich, don't forget the chair legs," as if it were only yesterday. Michael, my son, is 35. He works in real estate sales. It's an unstable profession, especially since the market slowed. Lately, I've seen him worn down, dodging my questions whenever I ask about work. I don't press. As a father, sometimes silence is worth more than advice. But I know he's caught up in something troubling: credit card debt, car expenses, or maybe just the pressure to look successful in a society that only sees the surface. Amber, his wife, is a modern woman in every sense. Stylish, brand-obsessed, always updating her social media. I don't call her bad, but her lifestyle feels distant to me. Linda was simple, while Amber loves sparkle. From high heels to the coffee machine, everything must match the style. She often tells me to upgrade the kitchen, or ditch that old wooden cabinet, it looks so country. I don't care. My house doesn't need to be trendy, only true to the heart. I still help them far more than a father my age should. When Michael said his commission hadn't cleared, I handed him my credit card to get through the month. When Amber complained about high car repair costs, I wrote a check saying, "Just go to work, the California roads aren't kind." Sometimes they text me in the middle of the night, only 4 words, "Dad, urgent transfer." I did it, no questions asked. But gratitude, I waited, and it never came. Every time they visit, the only topic is money. The house's value, my retirement account balance, or life insurance policies. No one asks if I've been sleeping well, if my back still hurts after days of mowing the lawn, or if I get cold when the Santa Ana winds blow hard at night. Even on my birthday, the only gift was an empty envelope with a generic "Best Dad Ever" card, no handwritten note inside. Often I feel like an ATM sitting in the living room. They come, punch in the code with a few sweet words or fake compliments, then withdraw and leave behind a house emptied of laughter. Once Amber even joked, half serious, "Mr. Rich really is a walking bank, no app needed." I laughed it off, but inside, every word cut like a blade. I think if Linda were still alive, she would place her hand on my shoulder and say, "Rich, don't let love turn into a habit of being used." But I already had. I loved my son so much I believed every dollar I gave was an investment in his happiness. Only when I looked back did I see all I got in return was the cold silence of those who had grown used to seeing their father as capital, not a human being. 2 months ago, one evening, Michael called inviting me to dinner. "Amber's making Italian, Dad. Don't miss it," he said. I brought a bottle of California Red Linda and I once loved, thinking it was just a simple family meal. After we ate, still sitting at the kitchen table, Amber suddenly pulled a folder from her purse and slid it toward me. "Dad, we're refinancing, and by the way, I think it's best if you sign this now. Transfer the house to Michael. It'll be easier to handle later. It'll be his anyway." I looked at the papers. It was a quitclaim deed, the type that transfers property ownership. I knew it well. Just one signature and the house would no longer be mine. Amber smiled brightly, patting Michael's hand. "This way we can borrow easier, and if anything happens, I can handle paperwork for you right away. Quick and simple." Michael stared down at his glass of water, saying nothing. I set the pen down, looked at them both, then said gently but firmly, "I won't do that. This house is mine. As long as I'm alive, it stays in my name." The air grew heavy. Amber forced a laugh. "Don't misunderstand, I just want to make paperwork easier." I nodded, stood up, and washed my hands. Dinner ended early. In the days after, Amber texted, "Dad, please reconsider. This is so we can help manage your future." Michael called, his voice small, almost begging. "Dad, we're stuck with a project deposit. If the house is in my name, I can get a lower loan rate. It's just the name, the house is still yours." I repeated the same line over and over. I'm not dead, and I'm still lucid enough to keep my house. The last time Amber called, I was changing the porch light. she said. Dad, people get so much money from their houses. Why not take advantage? You don't need to keep it all. I replied, you and Michael can borrow from anyone, but not from my trust. I hung up, carefully removed the SIM card from my phone, reinserted it, just to remind myself every connection can be cut if necessary. I haven't told anyone about this. At this age, the most precious asset isn't the balance in a bank account, but the ability to say no when someone thinks they can treat you as easy prey. I still live in this house. Each morning I brew coffee, sit on the porch, and watch the first light stretch across the orange grove. Every brick in this house carries the voice of the past. My sweat, Linda's warmth, Michael's childhood footsteps. I will not sign away a piece of paper just to make things convenient for children who have forgotten what truly matters. After that dinner, the night I refused to sign the deed transfer, Michael and Amber tried many times, calling and texting to persuade me, but when they failed, they never brought it up again. At least not in words. They still visited, still chatted cheerfully, still called me Dad, rich in voices sweet as pancake syrup. But I knew, when someone gives up too quickly on something they desperately want, it doesn't vanish. It's only being prepared again in another form. The first thing I noticed was that Amber began coming alone more often. Michael was always busy with an open house or meeting clients over the weekend, while Amber would just drop by to see how Dad's doing. At first, it was only a few minutes, bringing muffins, a salad box, and iced tea from a new place. Then it became half an hour, then an hour. I remained polite, offered drinks, made light conversation. But gradually her presence carried different tones. One Tuesday morning, Amber arrived while I was tidying the backyard. She wore athletic shorts and a tight crop top, the kind of outfit that, at my age, I only saw on magazine covers at the Target checkout line. Dad takes good care of the yard, huh? She laughed, settling into a chair on the porch. Looking at your back, I can't believe you're over 65. I only replied, the back is old, but I replaced the sprinkler last week, water's evenly now. Amber giggled, then leaned forward to grab the glass of iced water on the table. That lean revealed more than it needed to. I turned away. Not out of shyness, but because it didn't feel right. I grew up in a generation where compliments came with distance. A daughter-in-law shouldn't say things like, Dad still looks handsome, with eyes that test you like trying on a garment for fit. Later visits, Amber spoke more about the loneliness of the elderly, about how young women also need a safe place to lean on, and sometimes dropped half-joking lines. If I hadn't married Michael, I might have gone for the father-in-law instead. I gave a faint smile and changed the subject. I didn't think far ahead. I only felt a chill at the nape of my neck, though the day was warm. She even offered to help dust in the bedroom, a remark that almost made me drop my glass. I refused by pointing to the maintenance checklist hanging in the kitchen. I've got a schedule for every room, it's all clean. Amber just laughed, twirling her hair as if testing how far my reactions would go. I began to observe. Amber often placed her handbag in different spots each time, near the TV, by the outlet on the side table, even close to the bookshelf where Linda once kept our wedding album. She asked if I ever used FaceTime, said I should update my style, learn how to keep in touch the modern way. I told her, I've lived long enough to know silence keeps the most things intact. She smiled, but her eyes did not. One afternoon, she brought a bottle of white wine and said, just the two of us, light and chill. I declined, saying I don't drink alone. She teased, with me here, how is it alone? I looked straight into her eyes, not smiling. You are Michael's wife. She held my gaze for a few seconds, then turned away, voice airy. It's just one glass. After that, I changed a few things. Resealed the front door camera, installed a motion chime at the back entrance, and began logging the date and time of every visit Amber made. I'm not a suspicious man, but Linda once said, women have intuition. Men need behavior to confirm what they don't dare believe. And I began to see those behaviors, bit by bit. Each time she stood closer, each time her laughter lingered too long, each time she asked, aren't you afraid of being lonely? As though probing for an empty space inside me. I hadn't yet called it seduction. That word is heavy, but there was a boundary being tested here, and I, the keeper of this house, of principles, of trust from the days when America still used cash and rotary phones, knew that if I didn't stand firm, someone would try to cross it. Friday night. I had just closed my notebook when the phone rang. Amber. Her voice light through the receiver. Michael's busy showing houses late. I just stopped by Whole Foods and picked up some things you like. Can I drop by? I hesitated. That "can I" sounded like a request, but in truth it was already decided. I sighed. All right, but don't bring too much. I can't finish it all. Don't worry, just salad, pasta, and tiramisu, she laughed. 15 minutes later. Amber arrived, beige bodycon dress, soft-soled shoes that made no sound, hair loose. She entered as if she had lived there for years, set the food on the dining table, opened the containers. Meals like this are too sad to eat alone, she said. I nodded lightly, didn't object. Dinner began in silence. The salad was a bit sour, the pasta heavy with cream, but I ate out of courtesy. We talked of small things, the weather, rising gas prices, the house across the street repainting its fence. Amber told me about a new TikTok she made. Someone commented, "What a cute father-in-law you have." I didn't respond. I only said, "I don't belong on social media." She laughed. "That's fine, you belong to real life." After dinner, I stood to wash the dishes. Amber insisted on helping. I refused. She still followed into the kitchen, standing closer than necessary. When I finished drying the last plate, she handed me a towel. Before I could take it, she grabbed my wrist. "Dad, Rich," her voice softened. "Do you know, men like you are rare these days." I pulled my hand away, polite but firm. "I'm just an old man who survived a few bouts of inflation." I started to step out of the kitchen, but Amber moved quickly, blocking the doorway. "Not just that," she said, then bent down, slipping off her coat so it slid to the floor as if to draw attention casually. I stepped back. "Amber, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice dry like a piece of aged wood. She didn't answer, only came closer, arms circling my waist. The motion was quick, natural, as if it had happened before. Her hand moved up the buttons of my shirt, 1, 2, then stopped at the third. After that, Amber leaned in as if to kiss me. I was stunned, pushing her away forcefully, stepping back toward the window. "Amber, stop. This is my house. You are Michael's wife." She froze. Her eyes no longer held the sweetness they usually did. Instead, they carried a look so cold, direct, and brazen that I felt afraid. Not afraid of her, but of something that had just been triggered. A script I hadn't known I was cast in. She pulled her strap back up, smoothed her hair, then turned, calmly walking to the sofa, picking up a glass of water and taking a sip. No apology, no hint of embarrassment. I had never seen someone switch expressions so quickly. Then she smiled, not the embarrassed smile of someone who'd made a mistake, but the smile of someone who already knew the outcome. "I'm sorry. Maybe I drank a little too much." I stood still, trying to steady myself, my hand trembling slightly. My heart wasn't beating fast from emotion, but because something wrong had seeped into every crack of this house. I couldn't yet name it. I only felt what just happened wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated. "Anyway, I'll go now. Let you rest," Amber said, picking up her bag and walking out the door as if nothing had happened. I didn't stop her. I didn't even see her out. I only nodded, opened the door. When the sound of her shoes faded into the front yard, I shut the door and locked the bolt with a shaking hand. I sat down in my armchair, the wedding photo of Linda and me still on the shelf by the TV. I looked at her smile in the picture. Linda wasn't someone who said much, but she always saw the things I missed. I remembered clearly something she once said. When she was alive, the worst things don't always come from strangers, but from those we mistakenly think are close. Back then, I hadn't thought she was referring to anyone. Now I understood. I didn't yet know what was being planned. I only knew the feeling I just had wasn't random. It was deliberate. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay flat, arms crossed over my chest, staring at the dark ceiling, listening to the ceiling fan spin like a countdown clock. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, but I knew this wasn't over, and what came next would be something else. The next morning, around 7:36 a.m., I received an email from Amber. The subject line was short, "Something private to discuss." I meant to ignore it, but at some moment, maybe still haunted by the night before, I opened it. Inside was just one short line. "Dad, Rich, watch this before you decide to stay silent. We'll call it 10, and a video file attached." I turned on the computer, waited a few seconds. The video played and my heart clenched. I saw myself in the frame, standing in the living room. Shirt unbuttoned at the top, 2 buttons, Amber's arm around my waist. But then came something I knew for certain had never happened. I lifted my hand to stroke her back, then said something, though the sound was distorted, making it look as if I was whispering something private. The angle was high, shot from the corner of the ceiling, clearly set up beforehand. Likely the very lamp Amber once suggested. "You should replace this, it looks outdated." I shut the video, my heart pounding. Not because it was real, but because it looked real enough to deceive others. To outside eyes, it was me, a dirty old man crossing the moral line with his young daughter-in-law. At exactly 10, the landline rang. I let it go to the third ring before picking up. Michael was on the other end. His voice was small, lifeless. "Dad, I know that video might make you angry, but Amber has a point. It's very easy to misunderstand, so the best way is to handle it internally." I gripped the arm of the chair. "What do you mean?" He was silent for a few seconds, then spoke in that same pleading yet calculating tone I'd heard when he was 15 and broke the neighbor's window. "If you sign the deed transferring the house and give us $80,000 from your IRA, Amber will delete the video. No one has to see anything. No legal trouble. It all ends here." I stayed silent. The room stayed silent. On the other end, I could hear faint breathing, probably Amber standing beside him. "Think about it, Dad." Amber's voice came through, no longer sweet, but cold and dry like legal paperwork. "If this gets out, it's not just friends, but your parish, your community, your volunteer group. Everyone will see you as a pervert. People don't need the truth, they only need an image." I spoke slowly. You staged this. Amber laughed. We only recorded what happened. No one forced you to hold me. You did it. The camera just captured it. I slammed the wooden table. I never. Michael cut in. Dad, don't yell. This is a settlement offer. No one wants to make it a big deal. You sign the house over to me. Transfer the 80,000. Then everything will be fine, I promise. I set the phone down, not hanging up, just letting it fall onto the table, the line still open. I stepped out onto the porch, took a deep breath. The scent of early-season orange blossoms still lingered, but it couldn't mask the choking knot in my throat. I was being blackmailed by my own son. And by my daughter-in-law, who just last night had walked into my house, set up a filthy scene, and now wielded it as a weapon to shatter everything I had guarded. My honor, my property, the truth. That afternoon they came to the house, unannounced. Michael stood behind Amber like a shadow without direction. She walked straight in, placed a folder on the table. This is a quitclaim deed. You just need to sign. I've already called a mobile notary. They can come tonight. We've also lined up a buyer. The house could be sold within 10 days. I didn't touch the folder. You think I'll give in that easily? Amber folded her arms, stood straight. It's not giving in. It's choosing between silence and disgrace. Michael added, voice low as if apologizing to himself. We need the money to cover the car debt and to invest in the new property project. Just this one last time, help us. I let out a dry laugh. One last time. Did they think I was an ATM for their cruelty? I didn't sign. I didn't shout. I only looked into Amber's eyes and said, I once thought you were a stranger who could learn to be family. Now I see you're just someone familiar, wearing the mask of family to exploit. Amber didn't reply. She gathered the papers, pulled Michael out with her. Before closing the door, she turned back. That video will not disappear. If you don't sign within 7 days, I'll send it out. Not to one place, to many places. And you know well, an old man like you has no right to explain. The door closed. The house fell into a terrifying silence. I stood in the middle of the living room, the wedding photo of Linda and me quietly watching from above. And for the first time in many years, I let myself cry. Not because I feared losing the house or the money, but because I had just seen the clearest, most terrifying truth. My family was no longer a family. It had become a criminal organization under the mask of care. The next morning, I woke at 5:30 as usual, but I didn't make coffee, didn't turn on the radio, didn't sweep the yard. I just sat in the armchair in the living room, watching the first light crawl through the window. Normally, that was when I began my American morning, sipping coffee, checking the local news, then inspecting the sprinklers in the yard. But today, I wasn't myself. On the table, the folder Amber had left was still there. I hadn't touched it. I didn't need to read it to know the position I was in. A trap, a fabricated video, a quiet but vicious threat, and above all, a betrayal from the very two people I once believed were family. I needed air, needed to step out of the four walls that yesterday were still a shelter, but now had become the scene of a conspiracy. I put on a coat and walked next door to Mrs. Green's house. She was 72, once the head nurse at Garden Grove Hospital, retired nearly 10 years. She was the kind of neighbor everyone wished for, always baking, remembering trash days, always knowing who just installed a front door camera. Linda had been close to her. After Linda passed, she often brought over chicken soup, ginger cookies, or simply asked, "Are you doing all right?" Today was the first time I knocked on her door myself. "Richard," she opened in under 5 seconds and at the sight of me immediately asked, "Why do you look so pale? Come in." I didn't circle around. I told her directly, from the video to the threat to the demand that I sign over the house and transfer money. I spoke in an even tone, not wanting to add color to something already so dark. Mrs. Green listened, eyes wide, fingers tightening around the teacup in front of her. When I finished, she didn't answer right away. She only exhaled deeply, then stood, walking into the kitchen. I heard the faint clink of porcelain, the microwave's beep, then her steps returning. She set a cup of hot cocoa in front of me. "You're being blackmailed, Richard," she said. "And if that video is fabricated, then this is extortion with elements of fraud, and I can assure you it violates California criminal law." I looked at her, surprised. "Since when do you know about all this?" She smiled, for the first time since I'd started. "You forget I worked in the ER. 1 in 5 cases was domestic abuse. 3 more were family fights, elder exploitation, or forced property transfers. I didn't just treat people, I listened to them. And I learned, never stay silent when you know you're right." I gripped the cocoa cup tightly. "You need a lawyer," she continued. "And you're lucky I know one, the neighbor behind us. John, he used to be a district police officer. He's retired now, but his wife is an old classmate of mine. John knows a retired lawyer who does pro bono work for seniors in the community. She stood, opened a drawer, and pulled out an old leather notebook. Flipping a few pages, she took out a slightly yellowed business card. David Carter, she said. He worked at the county legal aid office. Sharp, steady, and most importantly, he believes seniors have the right to be protected, even from their own family. I accepted the card. My hand still shook, but something inside me was hardening, like dry soil meeting rain after drought, a feeling I thought I'd lost since the night Amber stepped into my living room. "Do you think I should make this public?" I asked. Mrs. Green looked at me, tilting her head, then spoke in a voice deep as a church bell. "Richard, people don't need shouting to hear you. But when your honor is under threat and the truth is twisted to paint you as the villain, you have a duty to speak out, not just for yourself, for anyone who's ever been exploited by their own family." I nodded. The cocoa had cooled, but my hands were warmer. I stood, thanked her, and stepped out into the yard. The Anaheim wind that day wasn't as harsh as yesterday. I looked across the street, my house with its white fence, the door camera, and the porch steps where I used to sit reading every afternoon. I knew I still had a way out, and this time I wasn't planning to retreat. Monday morning, I had an appointment with David Carter at 9. He lived about 5 miles away in a small, tidy red brick house, the front yard filled with lavender and purple daisies. Mrs. Green called it a lawyer's house that still grows flowers, and now I saw she hadn't exaggerated. David Carter opened the door right on time, thin frame, silver hair, but eyes sharp like someone still in practice. He welcomed me into a small office converted from a garage, with a shelf full of California law books, an old HP printer, and a whiteboard behind his chair. "Mrs. Green gave me a brief outline," he said, handing me a glass of water, "but I want to hear it straight from you, no details missing." I told him everything: the night Amber came over, the unexpected embrace, the crossing gestures, and the video they sent by email. I described in detail each act, each line in the clip, and the ultimatum that followed. Either sign the deed in hand over $80,000 or they would release the video. Carter didn't interrupt. He only nodded lightly, jotting notes in a pad. When I finished, he pushed his glasses up his nose and said in a calm voice, "Richard, you are the victim of an organized crime. What they did, setting you up, secretly filming, manipulating the video, then threatening to release it to seize your property, meets the elements of felony extortion under California Penal Code 518. I sat up straight. Felony. Exactly, and not just one. First, extortion by threat, using your reputation and image to coerce property transfer. Second, if that hidden camera was placed in your house without consent, that's a violation of privacy under California Penal Code 632, especially since this is a two-party consent state." I nodded slowly. He continued, "As for the so-called quitclaim deed they gave you, if you sign under threat, then legally that is an act of coercion. The law calls it duress, and in this case, any property agreement signed under duress can be voided, completely nullified." I looked at the whiteboard behind him, where Carter began writing line by line. The first line, illegal surveillance. The second, extortion by threat. The third, duress voidable deed. And finally, elder financial abuse civil code. "This one here," he said, pointing at the last line, "California has laws protecting seniors. Any financial abuse targeting people aged 65 or older can be considered elder financial abuse. Which means not only can you fight back criminally, but you also have the right to file civil claims." I said nothing. Everything came at me like waves, but strangely I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt clear, as if someone had just wiped away the dust on a window I hadn't realized was clouded. "What should I do first?" I asked. Carter leaned back, arms crossed, thinking for about half a minute before replying. "First, you don't sign anything. Don't call them back. No dialogue. Every piece of contact should be documented and preserved. I'll help you draft a cease and desist letter, an official demand for them to stop their threats. But at the same time, we need to prepare a line of defense for your assets. Defense line: set up a revocable living trust. Transfer the house into the trust with you as both trustee and beneficiary. That way, legally, the house is no longer under your personal name, but belongs to a separate legal entity. Even if they coerce you into signing a deed transfer, it won't be valid because you are no longer the personal owner." I sat in silence for a few seconds, then murmured, I never thought I'd have to do this just to keep the house I've lived in for 40 years. Carter looked at me serious. You're not doing it out of fear. You're doing it because you have the right to protect what is rightfully yours. They're using the law against you. So we'll use the law to bind them with the very thing they despise. I nodded. This time it was a true nod. No hesitation left. Before I left, Carter gave me a list. Immediate actions. A phone number for the recorder's office to register an alert if anyone filed a deed transfer on my house. A note about the schedule to set up the trust. And one final reminder. If they contact you again, just let me know. You don't have to face this alone anymore. I walked out of that small office with my back straighter than when I had walked in. My house still stood, but this time not only because of bricks and cement. It was because I had found a way to rebuild the invisible wall they thought they had torn down. 3 days after that first meeting, I sat again in my car outside Carter's small office. In my hand was a USB drive containing the video Amber had sent me, the weapon they used to twist my honor. And the very same thing I would use to expose the truth. Carter had arranged an appointment with an old acquaintance of his, Deshawn, a digital forensics expert, once employed at a security firm in Irvine before opening his own practice. Carter put it simply, if anyone can break this video down to the pixel, it's him. Deshawn, an African-American man in his 40s, dressed plainly, spoke quickly but clearly. His office was on the second floor of an old building near Santa Ana, without a big sign. Only the words digital evidence and data recovery on the frosted glass door. Inside, machines were everywhere. Large monitors, cold white desk lamps, workstations humming like a server room. I handed Deshawn the USB. He plugged it in, typed a few commands. The first still frame of the video appeared on the screen, me and Amber in the living room, exactly the scene I had seen before. Light from the lamp, the window frame. And my face appeared like a stolen version of myself. I want to know if this video was tampered with, I said, my voice hoarse. Deshawn nodded. Let me run the checks. We'll start with metadata, then move on to motion frame mapping and audio waveform. The words were all technical, but Carter patted my shoulder reassuringly. Relax, he knows what he's doing. For the next hour and a half, I sat watching graphs flow across the screen, audio lines, motion charts, brightness levels, timestamps for each frame. Deshawn opened specialized software, stripped the audio from the video, zoomed into frames. The room was thick with concentration. At the 15th minute, Deshawn turned to us, pointing at the screen. Here it is, this frame spliced. Spliced, I asked. Yes, Deshawn nodded. The part where you appear to stroke Amber's back, it isn't continuous with the frames before and after. There's a micro jump cut. Only 0.4 seconds, but when I separate the motion vectors, it's clear as day. He replayed the video. I watched myself in the fabricated scene, but this time my eyes weren't afraid. I saw it, a slight jerk, an unnatural shift in light, a shadow cast at the wrong angle. Deshawn continued, voice sharper. The original likely showed you stepping back. Then they inserted footage of you in a different stance. They probably filmed separately, then stitched the parts together. Based on lighting and shadow alignment, I'm 85% certain this video is manipulated. Carter asked, and the audio, also doctored. They extracted your voice from another conversation and layered it in. Look here, see the waveform. Deshawn enlarged the sound waves. The inserted voice has a completely different compression pattern from the background. It doesn't sync with your breathing, with footsteps, or with the rustle of clothes, which means the dialogue was fabricated. I leaned back in my chair. My heartbeat slowed for the first time in days, stretched tight like a bowstring. Deshawn printed a preliminary report, underlining the splice sections, annotating with technical but understandable language. With this, Carter said, we can use it as counter-evidence if they release the video, and we can even charge them with fabrication of evidence, falsifying proof for financial gain. I held the printout with both hands, the paper still warm. For the first time since Amber stepped into my living room with that honeyed voice, I felt justice standing beside me. Carter turned to me. The next step is to store this video under proper chain of custody so it can be admissible in court. I'll handle that. You go home, keep calm, and don't react. Let them think you're still at a disadvantage. I looked at Carter, then at Deshawn. In my head, Linda's voice echoed. Rich, do you realize you're finally starting at the right time? I walked out of that office feeling lighter. I hadn't won yet. But I had my first weapon to begin the counterattack. And this time, I wasn't going to let them take anything from me again, my honor, my property, or the truth. Thursday morning, I typed a simple line on my phone to Michael. Call me back. We need to talk about the papers. Less than 10 minutes later, the phone rang. Amber spoke first. Dad, Rich, you just messaged Michael. Are you all right? I exhaled slowly, then answered with the tone I had practiced for 2 days. I'm tired, sweetheart. I don't want any more trouble. If signing and giving the money is the way to end this, then so be it. There was silence on the line for a few seconds. Then Michael spoke. Dad, are you serious? Serious enough that I feel ashamed for not listening to you from the start. Amber gave a soft laugh. That laugh, if I hadn't already seen her true nature, I might have mistaken for relief. But I had seen it, and I knew they thought they had won. I sat quietly on the wooden porch chair for a few more minutes, watching the orange trees bloom late after the rain. A strange feeling ran down my spine, not fear, but a razor-sharp clarity. Like holding a scalpel before a tumor that had silently hollowed out the body for years, there was no choice but to cut it out at the root. I went back inside and called Carter. Let's begin. Carter met me at his small office that very afternoon. He didn't ask many questions, just told me to sit, sign a few forms, then slid across a draft of a document he called the Shield. I skimmed through it and nodded. From that moment, the house I had lived in for nearly 40 years officially belonged to a revocable living trust, with me as both trustee and beneficiary. On paper, I was no longer the individual owner, and that meant, even if I signed any deed of transfer, it would have no legal effect. They won't know, Carter said calmly. Let them think you're preparing to give up. The next day, I personally went to the county office to register a legal fraud alert. The paperwork was quick. The clerk even wished me, good luck keeping your assets safe in this age of scams. I just smiled, thinking, if they knew who was trying to scam me, they'd never guess it was someone wearing the mask of family. Back home, I called the installer. This time, not just for the front door. I had Ring cameras mounted in the back, and another in the living room, with integrated audio recording and a posted notice right on the table. Conversations in this home may be recorded to ensure transparency and safety. I didn't want them to make any excuses about privacy. I wanted every word they spoke to become evidence. 3 days later, when everything was ready, Carter returned with a clear plan, no long speeches. He laid 3 things on the table: an invalid quitclaim deed, a fake cashier's check for $80,000, and a photocopy of the trust registration. I looked at them as if they were 3 baited hooks ready to be dropped in the water. Friday night, place these on the table. When they come, you act. As convincingly as you can, Carter said. The rest, let me in the DA's office handle. I nodded. Before leaving, I stood to see him off. But instead of shaking my hand as usual, he only looked at me and said quietly, Richard, you don't need to shout to reclaim the truth. You just need to stand firm and let them condemn themselves with their own words. That night, I didn't sleep, but not out of tension. I sat at the dining table, polishing the wedding photo of me and Linda. I placed it by the fireplace. In the picture, Linda smiled gently, her hand resting on my chest as if to hold tight to what was most real in life. I knew she wouldn't want me to endure humiliation, but she also wouldn't want me to lash out. She would choose the way I was choosing now, quiet, steady, and letting the law speak at the right time. I straightened my shirt collar, folded the bait folder, and sealed the fake check in an envelope. Then I placed a small note in the center of the table. All conversations here are being recorded. The next morning, I mowed the lawn as usual, watered the plants, made coffee, read the paper. No one knew that a silent battle had been fully armed, and I, the old man living alone in a 1-story house in Anaheim, was the one setting the trap. I wore a freshly ironed shirt, opened every window to let sunlight fill the living room. Linda used to say, if you don't want the house to smell old, you need to let the wind through at least once a day. I did that morning, not for the air, but because I wanted the house to be spotless when they walked in. I replaced the recording notice on the table as always. Notice, this conversation may be recorded for transparency. Simple, legal, enough to warn them, and if they still went forward, it would be their choice. I didn't rehearse much. All I needed to do today was one thing: keep a steady face, no raised voice, no trembling, no dropping the pen. Everything had to happen as if I had truly given up, ready to hand over this house as just another part of old age. 10:15, the doorbell rang. I looked through the camera. Amber stood in front, holding a document bag. Michael stood behind, shoulders hunched, shirt tucked in, new shoes. I opened the door. "Hello, Dad," Amber said, her eyes sweeping across the house as if checking every detail one last time. "Come in," I replied, voice just loud enough. Michael nodded a greeting without looking straight at me. He still had a conscience, just buried somewhere deep in his pocket. We sat at the table. I had placed the wedding photo of Linda and me at the edge of the table, like a small shield. No one touched it. Amber set the folder down lightly, as if handing over a car contract. "This is the quitclaim deed," she said. "You sign in 3 places. I've already marked them." I asked nothing, didn't demand to reread. I simply nodded, picked up the pen. Amber handed me a fine-tip black pen, the kind she often used to sign receipts. I took it. My hand didn't tremble, but I deliberately inhaled before setting pen to paper for both drama and realism. Once I signed, I pushed the folder back toward them. Michael glanced quickly, then stuffed it into the bag, as if afraid I might change my mind. I pulled from the drawer the envelope I had prepared and placed it on the table. "Here's $80,000, cashier's check. I withdrew it from the account yesterday." Amber smiled, not radiant like on her wedding day, but enough to show satisfaction. "You won't regret this," she said. "We'll be forever grateful." I didn't respond. Michael took the envelope without checking, sliding it into his case. That gesture said everything. They believed I was broken, and when predators believe their prey has lain down, they lose their caution. Amber asked a few casual questions. "Do you want us to hire someone to help tidy the house? After the deed transfer, we'll probably want to spruce things up a bit." I shook my head. "I can manage." She smiled. "That's good. I know you're always strong." I sat still, watching them gather the folder, close the case, and stand. No further questions, no farewell embrace. Before leaving, Michael turned back, for the first time meeting my eyes since he'd come in. "Thank you, Dad, truly." I couldn't tell how much of it was genuine, but I nodded, showing nothing. As they stepped out, I slowly slid the lock shut, not for safety, but to make sure they were truly out of the upper hand role they thought they held. I didn't wash the glasses they left, didn't clear the table. I just sat in my chair, looking at Linda's photo. I opened my phone, checked the cameras. The recording was saved. Every word, every look, every "thank you, Dad" preserved, clear, legal. Afterward, I knew they would call back. I didn't count the days. I just waited for the ring. And rings always know how to come just when people are starting to believe it's all over. Tuesday afternoon. The Santa Ana winds dried the porch door, blowing dusty heat into the living room. I had just watered the orange trees when the landline buzzed hard on the wooden shelf. "Michael." "No greeting. What the hell did you do?" I wiped my hands on a worn kitchen towel, set down the glass of water so it wouldn't shake. "What are you talking about?" "The deed transfer. Recorder sent it back. Fraud alert. They said the house isn't in your name." He swallowed, the plastic of the case scraping. "What did you pull?" "I didn't pull anything," I said, my voice steady as if reading rainfall stats from the local paper. "Last week. I put the house into a trust." Silence on the other end for a full beat, just enough to hear dry lips stick, then a heavy thud like a fist hitting the table. "You set us up," Michael hissed. "You signed and only then said, 'Do you know Amber already booked the broker? I promised people. Do you know how trapped we are?'" "I know," I said, "that I signed something with no legal effect. Whatever promises you made, that's not in my ledger." He exhaled like someone late after a sprint. "You're not being fair. You," his voice cracked, shards like glass scraping stone. "I'll call back." The line cut sharp. I sat in the armchair, listening to the ceiling fan spin and neighbors rolling bins to the curb. The world kept moving. Only 2 people who thought they held the keys now found the door locked. That evening, it was Amber's turn. Her name lit up on the cell phone screen. I let it ring to the 4th before answering. "Nice move," she opened, no subject, no courtesy. "Thought you were harmless. Turns out you still have teeth." "I keep my house." "You forget one thing," Amber said, her voice steady only by effort. "The video." "What video?" I asked lightly. I like hearing people say aloud the word they think is their weapon. "Don't play dumb," she lowered her tone. "You know it's enough to kill your reputation at church and around the neighborhood. One link, no court needed. Public opinion is faster." "I didn't do what's in that video," I replied. "If you truly believed it was real, you wouldn't have had to bring papers to my house for a signature." There was a hollow pause on the line, like an elevator stopping between floors. I could almost picture Amber's face, lips pressed into a thin line. "You think you're clever, but truly clever people don't have to hide their house in a trust like a thief. Trusts are so people don't have to sell their memories," I said, then shifted tone like shifting gears. "Don't call again tonight. The wind is changing." I hung up. Outside, the smell of baked earth thickened, sticky like glue. I left the curtain half open to watch the porch. A dry orange leaf caught the wind, spun 3 times, then stuck against a folding chair leg. The next morning, I brought my notebook to Carter's house. He was standing by the whiteboard, fountain pen in hand, with several faxes from the county recorder in front of him. 3 filings, Carter said, skipping any preface. 3 different offices. All 3 blocked because of the fraud alert. They're rattled. "I guessed Amber would threaten with the video last night," I said. Threat is their opening move, release is the last card, Carter smirked. If they still think the video is a weapon, they won't use it yet, because once they do, it's spent. So I stay silent. Silent, he nodded. From now on, let the recorder capture everything. No arguing, no explaining. I'll do the arguing for you at the right time. I sat in the hard wooden chair, staring at a black and white photo on the wall, Carter in his younger days, standing on courthouse steps with a sign reading legal aid. He handed me a copy of the recorder's notice. Polite wording, Carter said, but enough for them to understand. There's a wall they can't climb with noise. That noon, Michael called again. I heard traffic rushing in the background. He was probably parked near some real estate office lot. Dad, he said. Voice hoarse, I'm sorry for yelling, but can you pull the house out of the trust? Just temporarily. Once it's done, I'll give it back. Temporarily, I repeated. Sounds like borrowing trust. Dad, he paused, swallowing a breath. I don't want this to go too far. It already went too far the night you planted a camera in my house, I said. Now, I just sit here, waiting for the wind to change. That afternoon, Amber texted a string of messages. What you're doing only drags out the shame. One clip ends it. Don't push me. Do you want a new deal? I didn't answer. I went to the backyard, let water run through my hands, listening to the hose vibrate like guitar strings. When I came back, the final message appeared. Just wait. Carter called near dusk. I've updated the recorder's office and the bank that issued the cashier's check, he said, if they try to cash it. The bank will alert us, and if the video shows up, then it'll go straight to the right hands, the forensic expert, Carter said. Richard, justice doesn't like to run. It likes to walk, and it likes a steady ground. I laughed for the first time in weeks. You always sound like a preacher without a pulpit. Just guard your house, he replied. I'll guard the words. Night fell. I opened the windows, letting the day's hot wind sweep through the old wood smell of the living room. On the table, the recording notice still lay flat, straight as a ruler. Beside it, I placed a box cutter, an old habit from when I built shelves for Linda. The steel looked dull under the lamp, but sharp enough to remind me, real things don't need to shine. The phone stayed quiet for 2 hours, then buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it ring until the end. Voicemail captured a short line, just a few words. You think you've won. I didn't play it back. I turned off the living room lights, leaving only the porch light glowing through the curtain, a patient glow resting over the tile floor. I sat a while longer. Back against the chair, eyes on the wedding photo over the fireplace. I still remembered Carter's words that day. In this chess game, Richard, the more moves they make, the more evidence we gain. I nodded, and sure enough, within a week, Amber struck. I received a thick envelope, postmarked from a law firm in downtown Santa Ana. Formal letter, stiff wording. Our clients, Mrs. Amber and Mr. Michael Miller, assert that Mr. Richard Miller voluntarily signed a deed of property transfer along with a sum of $80,000. This was by free will, with no coercion. Should Mr. Richard Miller attempt to repudiate the transaction, we will pursue civil litigation for breach of contract and defamation of character. I set the letter on the table, poured more coffee. It didn't make my face flush. It only confirmed one thing. They were searching for a way out by running straight into a wall. I brought the letter to Carter. He skimmed it, marked a few spots with his red pen, then let out a dry laugh. They're wielding a void signature as a weapon, like a thief waving a plastic knife. The time's come, Richard. Now we let the law speak. At the first meeting with the police, Carter carried a file thick as an almanac. He opened with a simple line. This is a case of family-based extortion. The investigators looked at me, eyes mixed with curiosity and pity, but Carter allowed no pity. He placed on the table the printed emails Amber had sent, copies of Michael's messages, and the audio recordings from my house, all lawful, all pointing in one direction, coercion. When the police chief asked, is there any proof the video was altered, Carter nodded. He called Deshawn, the forensic specialist who'd once worked with the FBI. Deshawn arrived with his workstation and hard drives, beginning his analysis. I sat still, watching frames freeze on the big screen. Deshawn pointed at each pixel, explaining, here the lighting doesn't match the lamp source. This is evidence of splicing cut and paste. He replayed the slowed scene of me supposedly stroking Amber's back. The frame jumped a quarter second, my gaze shifted unnaturally, then snapped back. An editing glitch few would notice, but under magnification, it was clear as a knife mark on oak. Carter tapped his pen lightly on the table. That's all it takes for a jury to see. Don't argue you didn't do it. Show them the video couldn't be real. Deshawn printed the report, signed, sealed. Another thick file stacked onto Carter's pile. Amber wouldn't sit still. The next day, her lawyer sent a press release claiming I had fabricated a blackmail story to evade obligations freely committed. The local paper picked it up, running a half-true, half-gossipy headline. 68-year-old father denies signing over house to son. Neighbors read it. Some sighed, some avoided eye contact at the grocery store. But I didn't feel shame. I only felt calm because truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs time. In the afternoon, Carter called. Don't let the papers unsettle you. The more they speak, the more they bind themselves, because they don't know that video is now evidence against them. The police began opening an official case on criminal grounds. They listed the potential charges: felony extortion, elder financial abuse, falsification of evidence. I heard each word and my heartbeat slowed, not from fear, but because for the first time I believed justice was real, not just words in a law book. Michael still hadn't called back. Maybe he was drowning more in fear than in anger. Amber was different. She sent one last message on Saturday night. You think a trust will save you. You'll regret crossing me. I read it, then deleted it. I didn't answer, because I knew when a knife misses its strike, the hand holding it only cuts itself deeper. The next morning, they arrived on schedule. Two investigators, Ramirez and Cole, stood on the porch with coffee in hand, the Santa Ana winds flipping the edges of their folders. They didn't ask if I was well. They only said, we need to hear everything again in chronological order. I invited them in, pointing to the same wooden table. On it, I had placed my notebook, printed emails Amber had sent, and the recorder's notice copy. Everything I had, I laid down, like cards face down in the right slots. Ramirez started the recorder, stating the date, time, and place. I recounted no embellishment, no omissions, from the dinner with the quitclaim deed, to the spliced video, the $80,000 ultimatum, the voided signature, the heated calls, and the lawyer's letter. I paused at each milestone for them to mark it. Cole drew a timeline across a large sheet of paper, using a red marker to connect the dots. The line ran through my living room, bent toward Santa Ana where Amber's lawyer's office sat, then pierced the recorder's office like a pin. For the first time, I saw my story laid out like a map, the trajectory of greed. Then it was their turn. This morning, Ramirez said, a judge signed an electronic search warrant, subpoena for their carrier, iCloud, and Google data. We also requested records from the retailer for Amber's online purchases. A mini camera doesn't just drop into someone's living room. Cole placed a copy of the warrant in front of me. Blue ink signature, embossed seal, all as cold as Carter's words. The chessboard doesn't like noise. That afternoon, they returned with a dedicated laptop, hooked to a big screen right in my living room. Data poured down like rain. Cole explained, this is the sync log from iCloud. A folder named House Project was created a week before the incident. Inside, there's a draft file named Script. MP4 notes with instructions on camera placement, timing when the living room light dims, and the phrase "no one will believe you" underlined. I looked at the typed words, sharp, rushed, like someone afraid of being caught writing them. Reading the line, "Don't let Michael stand too close to the wedding photo," I felt my stomach tighten. They had planned every step. And here, Ramirez said, switching to a string of texts, "Amber, we'll try one last time tonight. If he pushes away, there's still the other angle. Michael, okay, the blurrier the video, the easier to tell our story. Amber, once it's signed, we sell fast. Dates and times displayed clearly. No room for coincidence. No room for misunderstanding." They asked permission to move on to Amber's residence under the warrant. I sat on the porch, staring at the empty street until Ramirez called back. We recovered the mini camera. The memory card still had temp files. The box was in the kitchen cabinet, purchased online, delivered the day before she came to your house. The way he said she was as dry as wood, I didn't feel triumphant. Only that it was the logical outcome. The next day, Cole brought me a thick PDF of evidence. The camera purchase invoice, delivery account, Amber's nail salon appointment matching the time she placed the camera, went early, said it was for nails. I signed the evidence receipt, noted the chain of custody just as Carter had instructed. When truth walks, don't let anyone force it to run. At the same time, the bank responded about the cashier's check. It had been presented but flagged by the system. Logs showed Michael brought it to the counter, his face on the bank's internal camera undeniable. "We've archived it," Ramirez said. "They've closed another loop on themselves." That afternoon, Deshawn, the forensic expert, came to the precinct, presenting his final report before the team. I wasn't there, but Carter called me as soon as he stepped out. Done. They nailed the splice at 0. 4 seconds shadow misalignment, audio dubbing, missing fabric rustle under the sweet talk line. Report signed, ready for the ADA. I heard cars passing on his end and thought of a simple truth: if they don't trust my ears, they'll trust the machine's eyes. At this point, the cracks began to show. Michael texted me at midnight, "Dad, can we talk?" I didn't reply, not from hatred, but because any word I spoke now could become an obstacle to justice itself. The next morning, Amber posted a cryptic story, "Don't tell me how to live." Ramirez screenshot it, saying, "Motive isn't in the words, it's in the heartbeat of someone posting at 2 a.m. By the weekend, they called me to the ADA office. The meeting room was colder than it needed to be. The assistant district attorney flipped through Carter's thick file, marking pages with neon tabs. "We'll pursue felony extortion and elder financial abuse," she said. Voice sharp as steel. "If the video is proven manipulated, we'll add manipulation of digital evidence." Mr. Miller, are you prepared to serve as the primary witness? I nodded. Linda had once told me, when you need to speak, speak before the person who decides. On the way home, I pulled over, bought a black coffee at a small corner shop. The sun was gold, dry orange leaves spinning slowly on the sidewalk. I remembered the wedding photo on the mantel. People think happiness is laughter. I believe that, at some point, happiness is simply being able to call something by its true name in a room where the recorder is running. That night, Ramirez sent a short message. File has been transferred to the ADA. We'll contact you if we need more testimony. Thank you for your patience. I replied, I'm not going anywhere. I set the phone down, switched on the porch light. The yellow glow spread over the doorknob like a thin ribbon. In this house, everything was in its place. The wooden table, the armchair, the photo, the notebook. Only one thing was no longer the same: fear. It had been peeled away, sealed in an envelope with the rest of the evidence, waiting for the courtroom. The day I walked into court, Anaheim drizzled. On the courthouse steps, strangers hurried under umbrellas, dodging each other like flowing water. I walked slowly. At 68, there was nothing to rush for. My house was still mine, and today was the day truth stepped out from my porch to stand in public. The courtroom was wide, polished oak gleaming under yellow lights. I sat in the witness bench. Just behind Carter, he wore a charcoal suit, eyes fixed on the case file. At the opposite table, Amber and Michael sat with their lawyer, a slick-haired man in a red tie, the kind whose voice was trained to twist evidence into doubt. Amber wore a black dress, lipstick paler than usual. Michael kept his head down, fingers laced tight, eyes on no one. I had once seen those hands grip a baseball glove when he was 12. Today, they clenched for another reason. The ADA rose to begin. Your Honor, members of the jury, this is a case of felony extortion targeting a senior citizen. The defendants, Amber and Michael Miller, planned covert recording and edited a video to defame Mr. Richard Miller in order to seize a house valued at $450,000 and a sum of $80,000. Her voice carried evenly, not loud, but each word pinned into the wood. The opposing attorney countered immediately. My clients did not coerce anyone. Mr. Richard voluntarily signed, voluntarily handed over the money. If there is disagreement, it is a family misunderstanding. One should not turn an internal dispute into a criminal matter. I sat still, listening as if to an old tune. Family misunderstanding. Those words weighed like lead, but Carter had advised, you don't need to get angry. Let the evidence speak. When I was called to the stand, all eyes turned. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Then I recounted no more, no less each step, from the dinner with the first set of papers, to the fake video, the ultimatum, the check, the trust, the fraud alert. I didn't look at Amber while speaking, but I heard her chair shift slightly like someone losing her footing. Michael did not raise his head. I remembered Linda used to say, truth doesn't need makeup. It's beautiful on its own. Today, I let truth stand on its own. Then it was Carter's turn. He called Deshawn, the forensics expert. Deshawn opened a slide and played the video on the large screen. The jury held their breath as he zoomed in on the misaligned light in the frame. Here, Deshawn pointed, is evidence of splicing. Impossible if the video were original. Furthermore, the audio waveform here is different from the background. This is editing. Charts appeared, blue and red, but no one looked away. A middle-aged juror shook his head slightly, lips pressed tight. Carter continued, voice low but firm. If this were real, why was splicing needed? If this were consensual, why a hidden camera? And if this is family, why prepare an email titled "Force the Old Man to Sign"? He placed a printed email on the lectern. No one answered. The opposing lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge raised a hand. Let him continue. Amber was called to testify. She tried to stay calm. I only wanted to take care of the family. He signed on his own. He handed over the money without anyone forcing him. Her voice trembled slightly. Her eyes didn't meet the jury. The ADA produced copies of messages. We'll force the old man to sign over the deed. Amber fell silent. The judge ordered her to respond. She shook her head, saying nothing. Michael was called as well. He only repeated, I didn't want things to go this far. That half-confession rang out, making the courtroom go dead quiet. When the ADA finished, she simply said, this is no longer an internal matter. This is a criminal conspiracy targeting a father, a widower, a senior citizen. California law does not permit this. I left the stand and sat back down. My heart beat slowly, no longer heavy. I looked up through the high courtroom window. The rain had stopped. A thin sunlight slanted in. I remembered Linda and what she used to say whenever I wavered. Justice walks slowly. But it forgets no one. Today, I believed it more than ever. The court would deliberate, but I knew the blade had turned, and I was no longer the one holding it. On the day of sentencing, Anaheim's sky was strangely blue. No rain, no wind, only flat sunlight spreading over the courthouse steps like a tablecloth ironed the night before. I walked slowly, one hand on the railing, the other holding my worn cap. In the hallway, footsteps sounded in short, crisp beats. No one spoke loudly. Perhaps everyone understood. The noisy stories had been told at the previous hearing. What remained was the seal of the law. The courtroom was fuller today. A few unfamiliar faces sat in the back rows, likely reporters. I saw a small handheld camera resting by a knee, its red light off, patient like a timekeeper. Carter met me at the door, nodded lightly, and said nothing. We took our seats. I looked straight at the judge's bench, where the light drew a thin line across the wood. The judge entered. Everyone rose. When we sat, the room shrank down to a steady voice, measured, slow. Sure, the court's summary, the prosecution's closing, the acknowledgement of forensic reports. Everything was in the record. There was no room left for persuasion by emotion, only weighing and measure. Then Amber's lawyer asked to make a final statement. He spoke of family context, of mutual misunderstanding, of a young woman pushed into financial desperation. I listened to it all and felt no anger. Those arguments had been drawn from the same bag, the bag that arrives with the conclusion prepacked. All mistakes can be softened if labeled family. But that label would not stick today, because the prosecution wasn't talking about morality. They were talking about acts. They brought numbers, timestamps, files, cuts, and digital fingerprints. The judge asked both defendants to stand. I saw Michael swallow, his collar rasped against his chin. Amber, by contrast, stood straight, chin tilted up slightly as if resisting the room's weight. The judge's tone did not change, but each word hit its target. MS. Amber Miller, the court finds you guilty of felony extortion, elder financial abuse, and manipulation of digital evidence. Given the level of planning and calculation and your leading role, the court sentences you to 10 years in state prison, with an order to reimburse the victim's legal costs. There was no cry, no dramatic collapse, only a wall clock ticking slower than usual. I saw Amber's hand grip the table edge, knuckles whitening. She stared into the empty space ahead, as if by looking long enough, a door would open. The judge turned to Michael. Mr. Michael Miller, given your partial cooperation and the fact that you did not lead, the court accepts a plea deal, 4 years probation, 12 months in county jail on a community schedule, financial penalties, and restitution to the victim. Your licenses related to real estate are suspended for an appropriate term as determined by the regulatory authority. Michael closed his eyes for a moment. I didn't know whether he was regretting or breathing. I thought of the 12-year-old boy who dropped his baseball glove, hands dirty, looking up to ask if I thought his swing looked good. I had nodded then, just to make him happy. Today, I had nothing left to nod to. The judge paused, scanning the room as if to remind us that precedent does not rest on sentiment. The court notes, all family misunderstanding arguments fail in the face of technical evidence, message threads, emails, and the legal mechanics of a trust. This is not an internal dispute. This is a criminal act against a senior citizen. This sentence aims to deter and to restore faith in the law. The gavel struck 3 times. The room released a particular quiet, not emptiness, but reassurance. Carter turned, touched my elbow. It's done, he said, like a carpenter settling a chair he's just repaired, testing the weight, hearing the wood no longer groan. Outside, the sun had climbed higher. Reporters lined a narrow strip between the steps and the railing. Someone asked how I felt. I only said, I thank the law, and I thank those who believed in something simple. Video can lie, but data does not. A young reporter asked, do you have any words for families facing something similar? I thought for a second, then answered, keep your papers, keep your boundaries, and keep calm long enough for the truth to arrive. That afternoon, local news sites ran the headline, The Anaheim Trust Sting. The article recounted the journey of a 68-year-old man protecting his home with soft tools, a trust document, a fraud alert, a few lawful recordings, and unbroken patience. I read it feeling embarrassed, as if the paper were writing about someone else. Neighbors texted, you make us proud. The church pastor called, God stands with justice, Richard. I replied with a plain word, thank you. Because glory doesn't clean a floor, it only reminds people to open a window. Night fell, the porch light still shone. I hung my cap on the wooden hook, poured a cup of tea instead of coffee, and sat in the armchair. On the mantel, the wedding photo of Linda and me seemed lighter. I touched the edge of the frame, remembering her voice, don't let fear teach you how to live. I thought, perhaps through these past months, what I learned was not just law. I learned how to stand still in a storm and let the storm pass. As for Michael, I won't write him a letter. If he sends one, I'll read it. If he apologizes, I'll listen. Forgiveness is a long road, not a signature on a page. As for Amber, the sentence had already spoken for everything words could not fix. After the sentencing, Anaheim mornings returned to their rhythm. The garbage truck at 6:15 sharp, the mailman stopping at the corner curb, and sunlight pouring across the kitchen table like an old promise. I pulled out a cloth from under the sink, removed the old countertop, measured against the oak board I had bought. Linda used to say the kitchen was the heart of a house. The heart doesn't need to beat loud, only steady. I cut edges, sanded, reset the hinges. The sound of screws biting into wood rang solid, like an answer that needed no words. The backyard orange grove was trimmed again. I dug a new drainage line, replaced the sprinkler system broken by the winds. Fresh shoots sprouted, green enough to calm the eyes. I planted a small wooden sign, property of patience. Mrs. Green stopped by with a tray of cinnamon-scented pastries. Your yard looks neater than last year, she said, her eyes glancing at the porch as if to check whether the wind had truly settled. I poured tea, set the pastries on the table. We didn't mention the court, didn't mention nights when the phone rang strangely. Today's silence no longer tasted bitter. It was like shade standing in the right place under the sun. On Sunday, I returned to the church carpentry group. The small workshop behind the hall smelled of sawdust, oil, and watered-down black coffee. I joined the men measuring, cutting, joining, sanding, and assembling benches for the youth class. Young Dan, 17, ink still on his fingers, watched me sand oak and asked, "Why do you sand along the grain?" I told him, "Because fighting the grain only tears the surface. Going with it makes the surface smooth itself." He nodded, his eyes catching something larger than woodwork. At noon, the pastor stopped in, placed a hand on my shoulder. "We thank you for the benches. But we thank you more for not letting anger teach you how to live." I only smiled. People praise when they see the finished piece, but the hand holding the nails knows. What keeps things standing are the hidden joints inside. The local paper still kept the Anaheim Trust sting in its features. I read it once more, then folded it into the drawer with receipts for wood, screws, and mineral oil. I didn't delete Michael's number, but I moved it down in the contacts. Below new ones, Dan, the carpentry group, the city librarian, the block captain. Not cutting off the past, just placing it on another shelf where dust clings less. I met Carter at the corner cafe, returning the fountain pen he'd lent me when I signed the final affidavit. "Keep it," Carter said. "You wrote your story with it already." I shook my head, pushed it back toward him. "You kept the words for me, now I'll keep the house." He smiled, soft for once. We didn't shake hands long. Two old men don't need embraces to confirm what's already clear. That afternoon, I hung a new board in the kitchen. Scholarship jar. Not a jar of money for treacherous blood, as the paper had written. I called the community college office, opened a small fund in Linda's name, Linda's hands, to sponsor vocational scholarships for students wanting carpentry, plumbing, mechanics. The clerk asked, "How do you want the purpose written?" I said, "For hands that know how to make things stand." I hung up, dropped the confirmation paper into the jar. The soft tap of paper against glass sounded like a small bell. At night, I moved the armchair closer to the window facing the porch. The house was still the same 4 brick walls, but beneath the paint I felt it breathe differently, steadier, deeper. I pulled out the old pocket watch, wound it, listening to the faint tick. Linda used to tease, "You wind it like you're signing a peace treaty with time." I smiled. Peace isn't because the world outside has improved. Peace is knowing what to keep and what to let go. "Mrs. Green called over the white fence. "Mr. Miller, Friday afternoon we're baking, come by." I answered, "I'll bring scrap wood for the stove." She waved, "Bring a story too." "A story? Maybe I'll tell it by handing kids the bench they'll use to learn their letters, by planting another orange tree so next year the grove has more shade, by writing another check for Linda's hands." The best stories don't need loud voices, only someone who stays. At night, I turned on the porch light, the same glow that had followed me for nearly 40 years. Maybe one day I'll be too old and need someone else to change the bulb, but not today. I stood under the porch, breathing the scent of the new oak countertop, the damp soil in the yard, and the peace just returned. I touched the wedding photo frame, speaking to Linda as always. Our home is still here. Then I closed the door, the latch clicking once, small but firm, like the last signature at the end of a finished book. Tomorrow I will continue. Morning mowing, noon fixing chairs, afternoon at the church workshop, evening adding another paper into the scholarship jar. And if anyone asks what I've left behind, I'll say, I left behind the habit of believing blood is always right. What I've kept lives in every joint, every grain running true. A house, a name, and the quiet voice of a man who won the right way.